So I guess take it away.
Sure. So you know, I'm happy to make it as let's recording. Yeah, I'm happy to make this as interactive as possible. Or you know, if you guys have the software, we can go through the steps and all that, right? You can just talk you through the various steps as well. Hey John, and do it like that. But so you know, I was just going to start with like explaining the setup and explaining how I capture things in Sharpcap and create those videos, etc. And then we can go into like these steps, how to process the videos, and actually how to either make individual pictures or make animations out of it, right? So let me share. All right, so really quickly, just explaining the setup that I have. So I took this F9 telescope. It's a 900 millimeter telescope from Skywatcher. It's a doublet, but it's sharp. And I put on a new focuser. I put on a bunch of extensions. I put a quark on it at bottom. That's our, you know, the top red thing. Then there's a tilt adapter just below that, and then there's the ASI 174 mono camera. And this is the entire imaging train. It's really long for some reason. It's you know, I had to extend it a long way. The interesting thing is that with F9, the rays are that are coming into the scope are really parallel. So that's kind of really optimal for the quark to get as much it kind of likes higher focal length. So like F7, F8, maybe F9. F9 is actually a bit on the high side for the camera, because what happens is that a quark has a 4.2x Barlow in it. So it makes a 900 millimeter into, well, 4.2 times 900, I don't know, 38 something, I think, millimeters. And then, you know, you're sampling that focal length with a camera that has, you know, pretty large pixels. I think it's like 5 micron or something. But I think it's still kind of oversampled. So, you know, I was playing around to trying to put a reducer in between. So after the quark, so the quark gets real parallel rays, but then the reducer kind of makes it bigger again, so the camera isn't so oversampled. But you know, the reducer just adds a lot of vignetting, and I didn't really like that that much, because it gets a real kind of close area only zoomed out. So I haven't done that much with that. The tilt adapter is also really useful. I don't know if you've ever played with those kind of things, but this is a ZWO one, and you know, you can loosen up the screws and wiggle it around until you kind of get rid of any Newton rings, which often happen at solar. You know, it also depends on the camera. I've had a 120 camera, like just my guide cam that I first started using, and I think the sensor in that thing is tilted. You know, just no, not precisely manufactured or whatever, and the Newton rings are really terrible. So I had to tilt the camera probably like 10 degrees to get rid of the Newton rings. So you know, yeah, every camera has like different effects like that. And then on the right, I've got this high note solar guider, which is actually a cool little toy. It's you know, you can see the sun through a kind of little spot, kind of yellow in the center. That's just for visual guide. But this thing is connected with ST4 to the mount, and it just sends pulse guide corrections to the mount to kind of keep the sun centered, which works really well. I just had mount trouble recently. I don't know. I have to kind of open it up and do some things, but it keeps the sun basically centered. Or you know, if you're looking like an edge, you know, you can guide it on that edge really precisely. So that's really a nice thing. especially if you just set it up for the day and you're not perfectly polar aligned because you can't see the polar star or all that, right? This thing kind of handles a lot of the pain that you have there. So I got a ERF from Mike Mantini. So it's really large ERF. It's like way bigger than a scope, but I 3D printed an adapter and also put like some foil on it because the thing gets so hot that this actually makes the entire scope sit in the shade. So it drops the temperature a couple of degrees, and I think that was useful. It's my friend to use that kind of insulation a lot.
Can I ask you a question real quick about that?
Yeah, please.
That shield that you have there. I assume that actually helps you to look at it visually too, right? I mean, do you look at the sun visually at all?
I don't really.
Not really. Okay.
It's my story of astronomy is that I started as a kid in when there was not a lot of light pollution. We had like an antique bronze telescope. I have to find a picture of it one day, but it was always frustrating because it was so dim and fuzzy and stuff. And with super nice sensors, I just got spoiled into seeing all the amazing stuff that's there. So I have to try visual on the sun. It's probably bright enough, even with the quark and all that. But yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll shut up.
Does that shield not get in the way of the high node?
Yeah. So I actually I flattened it on the top, like you can see here. So
Okay.
so the high node just has enough opening. I normally try to cover my scope as well in the foil. This is just like an Amazon bag that I got, but I have a whole roll of the insulation material because everything gets hot, and I don't know if the grease starts to run out or whatever. I'm just afraid that
at a time like this when it's that warm, I found that I have a 174 as well, and it does get very hot.
Yeah.
At times like this in the afternoon, you have to put something over it to shield it. So mine will just cut out. It overheats.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine gets to like 50 or 60 Celsius, so it's pretty hot. But I've got an ERF at the top of the scope, so it stops IR wavelengths and stuff coming in. Then I have another IR just in my focuser, like in a defocused point in the image strain, so it doesn't burn out, right? So you want to have it like really far in. So that's another kind of IR cut, just for the heck of it,
Get rid of the difference.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. The 174 has a global shutter on it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you still get the Newton rings with the quark with the global shutter?
I've seen recently. I have seen some Newton rings, but far less.
Okay, yeah, because I've got the 178, which has a rolling shutter, and I, with the quark, I do get Newton rings, but I have that same tilt mechanism on there, and it does really help a lot.
See, I have a 174, and I've never had a Newton ring. I guess I was just lucky.
You do it through the lunt, though, don't you, Steve?
I go through the lunt. That's true.
Yeah, the lunt doesn't give me Newton rings. It's only the quark that seems to do it.
The only problem I have with mine, and I've complained about this to Steve, I think you remember hearing about it, John, possibly saw it there when we were doing the eclipse back in 2017, where my 174, for whatever reason, gives these bands. They're not Newton rings, they're these really broad bands going across the disk, and I can't figure out where it's coming from. And it only does it when you Barlow not the quark, the lunt. And but what I found, I read online on Solar Chat, you guys have probably heard Ariane and I mentioned that site, is that not only does a tilt adapter work, but if you have one of those things that people like using for imaging planets called a atmospheric dispersion corrector, or ADC. If you fiddle with that, it does tone down the Newton rings. And for me, my problems with the my 174, given those bands. It makes them, it tones them down. It's still there, but it's more bearable.
I've got a tip you may or may not cover in your presentation. It's particularly valuable for the quark since it happens to not be able to do the full disk. If you focus on the center of the sun, or an empty area of the sun, which is pretty easy to find right now, and then you defocus the imager, and you take like 100 frame capture, you can make solar flats out of that, and that will knock Newton rings right out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's what I do as well. And the other thing that does is that so the quarks, they have this mica element in it, which does, I don't know exactly how the physics works, but it's not perfectly uniform. And I actually see a band kind of diagonally kind of over my quark, where it's a bit darker, the image. But with the flat, you just get rid of that completely. So that's nice as well. So I think I shared some of the flats I made with that defocus method. But that's a good way. I think other people said you can do like a plastic bag over your scope and kind of fuzz it up like that and make a solar flat. But I found that it's, I don't know if I used the wrong plastic. It was transparent, but it just made everything completely dark, so it was not usable. So anyway. So yeah. So talking about Sharpcap, because I think that's kind of a useful thing to talk about. So the first, when I first started doing this, right, there's YouTube tutorials on all this, and your quark or probably other scopes, if you crank up the gain a lot, you can see all the prominences, right, and then the disk gets completely blown out, right, but you can see all the problems, so that's cool. So people do a lot is they then take a video of this and it just blacken out the disk, or alternatively do like another capture of like the surface, with like way less gain, and kind of recomposite it at the same time. But what I found recently is that you can actually capture it both at the same time. So if you look at this picture and you look at the histogram on the right of the screen, you can see this first bump in the histogram, and then it flattens out. So that first bump is mostly the effect of the prominences. So you can now visually see this a lot, but everything else is kind of clipped out, right? Everything on the right side of the histogram is completely clipped out. So if you actually then decrease, so what I do is basically you start hunting the sun to see like if there's anything cool happening on the limb or whatever. So you found one like this, right, at like super high gain. And then the next stage is, you can actually drop down the gain a lot. And if you now look at the histogram, you still see that bump at the beginning, like on the left, and that little bump, well, were the prominences, right? So that data is still there. It's just all the way on the left on the histogram. So, the first, like 10% of the histogram is basically your prominences. And then all the rest of the histogram is your surface, right? And what you want to do is tweak the gain and the exposures and all that to basically fit the entire histogram in, right? So nothing is clipped. And in this image, it's slightly clipped on the right. So there's probably some pixels that are like super wide on the surface, but normally this kind of worked well. So this actually means that I can now I can even use this for focusing or whatever, but I do capture the prominences even though I can't see it at all in my images or in my videos. But you can get them out with post processing. And the nice thing as well is that you don't have to recomposite the various exposures together. And also if you make an animation, you can see them both animate. And I found also that it's because of the extra data in the disk, it makes the alignment of frames when you make a video, it makes the alignment work much better because there's much more data for it to align upon. Otherwise, it only has the limb, which is super over bright, and some super fuzzy prompts. And I see a lot of people like, you know, Chuck on YouTube and stuff like that, where they make animations and you see the prominences like slide around a lot, right? And I think that's because they can't really kind of stabilize the frame enough. You know, you can try to do it manual, and you know, you can move every frame pixel by pixel to try to get it right. But I try to, you know, have the software do that. So I'll explain how to stabilize frames later if you guys want to know. So yeah, that's basically how I capture. You know, my capture machine is a crappy Celeron NUC with a SSD. The SSD is like 500 megabytes a second. You need USB 3. I'm able to capture about, you know, basically max frame rate from the camera. The trick for me was that I had to put extra memory in the machine, and then Sharpcap has an option when you have more than 4 gigabytes of memory that it can use the extra memory for a memory buffer. So it doesn't write it to the disk, but it stores it in memory. So, you know, you kind of take the entire disk out of the equation. You just write to memory, and memory is like, you know, 100 times faster than SSD even, right? So you basically can reach full performance that way easy. You know, the problem is, you know, everything that's super large, right? Because if you don't crop and you're storing uncompressed data, you know, even those 10 seconds, right? 10 seconds times 120 frames a second, 1200 frames uncompressed. So, you know, I uploaded one of these files, right? It's like 2.5 gigabytes. So if you make an animation, you want 80 of those things. That's 80 times 2.5 gigabytes. It just gets silly really quickly. So you know, I normally don't store my my videos anymore. You know, you kind of run them through auto stacker. You get a you know, a stacked image, and then you throw away the videos because you don't want to carry these 200 gigabytes of data around for a single capture.
Arjun, I haven't tried this with Sharpcap yet because I'm a biocapture person.
Yeah.
But what's the red square there in the image?
So yeah, that's actually an interesting thing. So I have another video, and I kind of parked it for later, but I can show it if people are interested. So what Sharpcap has is a, sorry, let me take a water. So what Sharpcap has is a seeing monitor. So what that does is you can drag this red square, or you can resize it or whatever, on like a high contrast area on your image, and it calculates a histogram in that little area real time. And it determines like what the maximum range of pixels is in the histogram, like the maximum between the darkest and the brightest pixel. And then it shows that over time. So that little graph that you see at the bottom is actually the seeing over time, you know, calculated from that little rectangle. So you know, yeah, it varies a lot, right? So obviously, you know, like we have here. But the interesting things then, what you can do is there's two options. One is that you can set a threshold. So if your seeing is better than a certain threshold, so I put like a threshold there, you know, you can click in that graph. Then when it's over the threshold, it starts recording a high-speed video. So that's one thing you can do. So it just waits until the seeing is good, and then it starts capturing really, really fast, right? So you can capture like 100 frames every time the seeing gets better. So that's one thing. The other thing you can do is you can only store the frames that have the best contrast in the histogram. So that's kind of the second option. It's kind of grayed out, and it's called like filtered capture. It's a bit laggy, because it's like real time calculating all these images and capturing them, and you know, the computer gets a bit laggy. But yeah, that's really nice. So you can basically, you know, if you just want 1,000 frames and you want all the frames to be sharp, then you can do that as well. And I have an example of that, what that looks like. If you care to see, it's interesting, right? Because it jumps around a lot, obviously.
What is the processor in your laptop or your computer? What's your processor?
So this is a NUC. It's like a Celeron 2 cores or something. I've been thinking of upgrading it. The other thing I heard is that, so the NUCs normally take 19 volts power, but you can also feed them with 12 volts. So I just put them on my battery, nice and portable, 12 volts, right? It works, etc. But I heard that the CPU gets throttled a lot when you only put 12 volts in it. So I'm actually going to try to put like full 19 volts in it and see if it actually, you know, maybe makes my processor like 50% faster, and maybe it works well. Yeah, the other thing is I'm remotely connected into this thing, so you know, it's always that's some extra performance. But yeah, especially the seeing monitor, and if that rectangle is a bit bigger, you know, it gets sometimes pretty laggy on that machine that I have.
I just bought a new laptop, and I think it's a 4-core i7.
Nice.
That should be fast enough then.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it with this from the Solar yet, so we're just curious.
Yeah. So let's see. Can I? How does it work? Let me see if I'll share another window. Do you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of these captures where it only captured the best frames. So it jumps around a lot, but because, you know, sometimes there might be seconds in between, right, or whatever. But it's a way to kind of decrease your file size, and yeah, you know, the nice thing as well is that it constantly records frames, and it only stores the frames that were sharp or sharpest, but it doesn't do it after the fact. So, you know, it does it real time, right? So it's not like, oh, now the scene is good, let's start recording, and then like a couple of milliseconds later, or 100 milliseconds or whatever, it finally starts recording the frame. No, this you know, takes all the frames, and it only stores the good ones. So I'm still playing around with it to see if I can get better processing out of it. You know, the other thing is I haven't figured out a way how to do it really well with making animations out of it. So this is more for still images.
Yeah, it would be interesting to compare this mechanism for capturing the frames with what AutoStacker does with frame selection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you feed this video into AutoStacker, right, the graph is a lot higher, right? So everything is like 80% or something. But you know, but even in that range, there's worse frames and all that. So, you know, it's just another selection approach.
One quick question.
Yeah, sure.
If I remember correctly, you had a ZWO electronic autofocuser on your setup in the beginning there. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Do you manually focus that, or do you have some sort of autofocus routine that you can run for solar? I haven't tried it, and I was just curious.
So the same thing that Sharpcap does with that histogram kind of analysis in that little thing, you can do the same thing for focusing. So you basically just highlight this thing. You know, if there's a sunspot, you know, it's great, right? Because there's a lot of contrast. So it's much easier to focus on that. But yeah, so Sharpcap has a autofocus routine built in for solar, so you can select kind of the area of interest, and it just goes through you know, the focuser positions and gives you a curve, and you can just select the best curve. I don't have a screenshot of that, but it's also really useful and really.
So you try to get that curve that you have in the middle on the right side, essentially. The line drawing one or the one at the bottom?
Yeah, no, so that's another window. It's basically one of these focuser curves, right? Which is always this kind of
the delta V deal.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah, so it's a different view, but it uses the same calculation of contrast within a little area of interest, and you know, it can make multiple exposures and all that. But yeah, it works well.
Cool.
And your Sharpcap talks to the focuser.
Sorry?
The Sharpcap does talk to the focuser.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you connect it to the mount, focuser, all that, right? So yeah, you can actually see in this window, there's on the bottom right.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do in, out, all that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I should have maybe put my scope up. I can do a live demo, but we'll do that next time.
You'd be filming clouds here.
Yeah, right. Cool. So yeah, you know, I can talk through things. I can show how things are done. You know, I'm game, whatever. So how this works for me is that I use AutoStacker. So AutoStacker is a nice way to kind of take a video as input, and it kind of finds the best frames and hold on, let me stop this. So it finds the best frames and then can stack them. So if I open up a video, let me just share it. Just share my entire. No, it's maybe not. Here you go. Yeah. I really have trouble. There's so much data, all this stuff. It just this goes crazy, right? All right, that doesn't work. Hold on, let me try to do the. Yeah, so now you see a frame of that of the capture that I shared in the workshop folder, and you know, you can play it here. And I don't know how well this kind of comes through with zoom and all that, but I think it's always interesting with these super high capture videos is that you see the bands of seeing, like the turbulence in the sky kind of, you know, go over the surface, right? And sometimes you have like amazing, like, oh my God, this is so sharp, and then you know, it just gets completely fuzzy again. And what AutoStacker does is kind of help kind of find the sharp frames, etc. An interesting thing that you can do here, just to see what data you have, is there's a thing called scaling, and there's a range thing, and it says now its range is 8-bit, but you can put it in like 6-bit, etc., and it just, you know, starts clipping through data and see some really ugly effects. But you can actually see that there's some data in the prominences there, right? So it's good to see that there was something there, right, on the limb. And you know, the stretching that we can do in PPG or Photoshop can kind of brighten up and get back to it. But it's good to see that data. So what AutoStacker does is, you know, you need to set this image stabilization thing. So you normally take like something which is like a bit more high contrast. Again, sunspots work really well. I've done it also on like the corner between on the limb of the sun, right? So you have the contrast between the background and the surface. So that sometimes works. But you know, you basically set this thing, and then it can start to analyze. So now I have to, for some reason, it doesn't capture both of my windows.
So
yeah,
you talked about those two places where you could set your anchor point. Have you noticed one works better than the other? Like say like the edge there you're talking about, or a feature on the surface. Which one do you think works better, or if it does it even matter?
Yeah, feature works best.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, to be honest, I don't really rely much on stabilization in this window because I think this is mostly the image stabilization, right? So if the image kind of jumps around a bit, right, it kind of gets rid of that. But the you know, there's multiple steps that it does to kind of analyze the frames and, you know, do like little squares of interest and all that. So let me just share a portion of the screen. Maybe this works better. Okay. Yeah. You guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've loaded this thing. You set this image stabilization filter, and then there's all these options, right? I normally basically take like normal. I sometimes, because I have a really fast computer, you know, you can do like improved tracking, you know, for jumpy recordings, and you can do like double stack reference. You know, to be honest, I haven't really seen amazing differences in quality. You know, the same thing with like the quality estimator, etc. You know, it normally works. You know, if you do a single image, right, you just load the single SER file, and you can kind of process that single file and get like a single stacked image out of it. But if you want to make an animation, what you can actually do is open AVI or SER, and then you can just select a whole list of videos, and then it will apply the settings that you select on all these videos one by one. So it just crunches through them overnight or something, and you know, at the end you just end up with single images, etc. So now I'm just starting to analyze. So again, this stuff is it's pretty heavy all on the processing. You know, my work PC is fast, so I'm fortunate, but it's you know, these things take a long time, and I can imagine if you throw like 200 gigabytes of data through this, you know, it becomes kind of painful. So yeah, now you can see this quality graph over time. So that did this kind of contrast analysis over time to see you know, how the seeing fluctuated roughly over the video. You know, you can see like some frames were good, but other frames were like way worse. You know, what it also does, I noticed in this preview window, is it picked the frame that had the best quality. So you can actually see kind of the best frame out of your video now in this preview window. I think it says it on the top is like frame 393 or something, whatever. So what you can now do is you can place a grid, and what the grid placement does is and this is the setting I had. Let me just I think the default is something like this. So what the grid does, I think, is it has this area of interest, and then it sees, you know, it analyzes the video, like how much it can track that little feature that's in that square over all the frames of the video. So it kind of combines, it gathers the data from, you know, how this thing kind of wiggled around due to the seeing and all that, and then stacks it into that little square. So this is basically the way to kind of compensate for seeing, which is like all over the place, right? You saw in the high-speed video, you see like the bands, you know, gliding over it, and if you go like super high speed, you know, you see like a bubbly turbulence and all that. But this way, where it uses the little squares, it does the compensation within each square. I found that, you know, reasonable squares like this work well for my kind of setup. You know, maybe it's different when you have like a full disk or something. Maybe use smaller squares or even bigger, or I don't know. I just use this 48 thing. The other thing is that this doesn't capture any of the prominences this way. So it's actually interesting that it doesn't put any dots on this, because this is basically an automatic placement based on the minimum brightness. So it just excluded everything that was not bright enough. So what I've ended up doing recently is I changed the bit rate, so now I can see the prominences. Now I can just manually put a bunch of these points there, right, and just keep clicking and click a couple, right? And now you have points on that area as well. And now you want to go back to 8-bit, and now you have some extra points on this on the prominence as well, right? On the low brightness stuff. So that's basically what you do, and then you can stack them. So the interesting thing that I learned recently is that in the stack options, there's this window, and it says either the number of frames to stack or the percentage. So what I ended up doing is I always have this default setup of like 5, 10, 20 here. So that means it will make 3 stacks, one of the best 5%, one of the best 10%, and one of the best 20%. You know, most of the processing time is in the other steps, and just generating the multiple levels of stacks is actually pretty free. And you know, it's useful. So you know, if you have a lot of great quality, you probably want to have like 20% or something. But if it's really wiggly and all that, maybe 5% is what you can only achieve, right? So you know, it's useful, right? What it does is it saves it into folders, which are called. Let's see, I can show it here. I think. So you have like folders, and that's called like AS P5, P10, P20, and that means the percentage 5, percentage 10, and all that. So it makes these folders, and then it just dumps a TIFF in that folder. So yeah, you know, you stack it, right? You just press stack, and it just goes through all this calculation, and it takes a fair bit of time. And what comes out of it is, I'll just go to my workshop thing. I'll just leave it running in the background, but I'll just open up the one that I already processed. And let me see if I can move it into the frame. Yeah. So yeah, you know, the end result is still pretty blurry. I think, you know, because I'm oversampling, right? I probably should bin it or do the reducer and all that, right? So your captures might be different. Yeah, this is basically the data that you get out. You know, again, right? You can see if your data is okay. You know, you can just put a little bit of curve there and see if you can get the prompts to show up. You know, there's something there, right? So I can recover the data, but there's also a lot of glare. So you know, I think Photoshop, you know, isn't really precise in the pixel quality. Sometimes it feels like, so there's easily a lot more bending than I see in PixInsight or in other tools. But you know, it's good to see that the data is there. So the other thing that I've noticed, and that's why I do another step now, is that after you go through AutoStackered, because it combines all these little squares, you see a lot of artifacts at the top and the edges of the frames, right? So you see a lot of kind of junky black pixels, etc., where it didn't have enough data to stack the image. So what I found is that I'm using this program IMPBG, which is I sent a link in the folder before. I found that, you know, that has a stabilization function, but the stabilization does not work when these artifacts are in the picture. So when it has these kind of rough artifacts, it doesn't work. So what you want to do is, you know, just crop those pixels out, right? If you need to, right, you can do like the clone stamp or something, but I normally just crop it. I've been using Photoshop actions on that. So what's useful for that is like I have this action that's called crop 40 pixels. It's a bit much, but at least gets rid of all these artifacts in one go, so you don't have to tune it anymore. and you can record an action in Photoshop. There's probably other tools that do the same thing. And basically the action is like, you go to record, like you go to image, and then you go to like image size, or sorry, canvas size. And then you do a relative crop of like minus 40 or something, right? Or minus 40. So now it makes the image 40 pixels smaller on each side, right? So if you make this action in Photoshop, what you can then do is there's a batch process in Photoshop here, batch, automate batch. And you can basically select the actions that you've recorded before. So I have a 5 pixel crop as well, or 40 pixel crop. You can select a folder, you can select a destination folder, and you basically just run it over all the images, and it saves new images with that effect applied, right? Also useful if you want to do like curves or levels or sharpening steps, etc. Right? You can make an action out of it and just apply it. So what you then get out of that is, it's not really sexy, but cropped. It's all the artifacts are gone on the side, right? So that's useful. So let me just close Photoshop for now.
Actually, Aryan?
Yeah.
So I was looking at your Photoshop window, and then I just
Sure.
kind of, maybe I'm just missing something, but I guess your histogram that you were showing there, like in the middle of the panel there, yeah, where you're pointing. Basically, what I'm getting at is that you look at what you were mentioning in your Sharpcap app of a recording. Oh, okay, there it is. Okay, I was looking for the prominence peak at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like, where is that thing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, never mind. I'll shut up. So.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's your prominence peak. So if you just make a little stretch of that, you can just see the prominences, right, and all that.
I got another question. Regarding animations, I don't have a high node solar guider, so I'm just using an Orion solar star shoot mount. Would you recommend registering the frames before you do that crop? Like use PixInsight or something to align all your individual stacked frames?
No, so I do the alignment as the next step. So the step I'm going to show you now. So
okay, I was just curious because I know that mine, if I did tried to do an animation after after an hour of frames, the spot or that I'm focused on will have moved.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking that for. So.
Yeah, I think your Orion thing is a Alt S one, right? So it probably rotates a bit over time.
Yeah, I have the same thing, so I have the same issue.
I don't know if that IMPPG kind of can compensate for a rotation. I don't think so. I think I've only seen. Hold on, let me see if I can move this into the window.
But yeah, that was why I was asking about, aligning before you crop them and then running maybe the IMPPG, the other stuff after that.
Yeah. So IMPPG, super useful tool. There's a couple of things you can do with it. So alignment, sharpening, and stretching. So if I take alignment, for instance, right, you can do this align image sequence. It's in tools. You can add the files, so I can use. Oh, this is actually another. This is not. Oh, let me just do the workshop files. Frame selection. Oh yeah, I should have first cropped them, but you can see what it does. Let me just add. Yeah, these ones are cropped. So yeah, you select a whole list of frames, right? I've used both of them at the same time. Sometimes one works, sometimes the other work. You just want to get stable frames. You know, I've used I think I've used like the solar limb before and all that, and it just keeps the limb kind of stationary. But the high contrast features also work because of this kind of image that contains the surface and the prominence as well. There's enough kind of detail in it to be able to align. So let me just make sure it's not in a folder. So now it starts to process it, and you know, you can see the pixel offsets here when it goes through every image, and you know, it's sub-pixel, so it tries to move it to kind of get in the same spot. So what I've noticed when I don't crop it, then sometimes it gets a vague error message that says like, well, couldn't find solar limb, blah, and at some point, and then you have to figure out where it was in sequence. Oh, it's like picture 40 was not correct. So you have to go into Photoshop, kind of crop picture 40 maybe by hand, and then try it again. And it's a bit trial and error, but yeah, it always works when the artifacts are gone and the sun is nice and clean in that place.
Do you have a contact with the developer of this to tell them this problem?
I've seen him post on Solar Chat. I have to tell him. Yeah, you're right. It's I don't know.
I mean, it may account for it, but I don't know if it does. Right?
Yeah. I don't know how often he updates his software. It's you know, I think this version is from January. So you know, I think all these people have daytime jobs and they just make these things. Right. So yeah. So anyway, that's a way to align them. I can show it if you guys want to. What came out.
John, are you concerned that the mounts that you and I have would rotate too much in order to use this tool?
Well, I was just curious because, yeah, you know, over time, you know, since it's an alt-az mount, the orientation would change. I haven't done an animation with it yet, though.
Well,
so.
I haven't. But I used AstroPip or something like that. I didn't have this tool to do the alignment, so I haven't tried that. I'll have to do that to see if this works.
Yeah, I'm just curious how it would align on that, you know, because I mean, it's just a workflow change otherwise, that's all.
Will this tool take into account, say, an hour's worth of frame rotation from an alt-az mount, I think?
Yeah, so I think, right, if I look at the log, right, the only offsets it gives are translations, not rotations, right? So it only translates.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, but you know, I don't know if you take half an hour. I don't know how much it rotates in half an hour. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a try on the frames that I've got. I'll use this tool, which I downloaded, and see if it will do the alignment.
I mean, I'm thinking if it doesn't account for it, I'll just run them through PixInsight and register them that way.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And then I would, you know, follow the rest from there.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah.
So for this, right? So we have a stabilized image. Let me just grab the TIFF. Yeah. So yeah, this tool, right? When I first started using it, it was because of the deconvolution step that it has, and it has this nice algorithm, Lucy Richardson deconvolution, and you get this little preview window. So you can basically run the deconvolution over your picture window, right? You can scroll with your mouse wheel and can see what happens. So you know, it's actually pretty powerful, right? So you can just drag the slider and you can immediately see the sharpening take into effect, right, in real time, etc. I think, you know, the best practice here is that you don't want to turn it into like little worms like here, right? Because that's over sharpened. So you kind of just want to kind of give it a little effect. So yeah, you can get a bit more contrast and all that. You can play around with iterations. You know, ringing is interesting, especially at the point where it's super bright and all that. Well, you can't see it right now, but I'll show it to you later. But you can see a nice effect on, like, you know, what it does in terms of the sharpening, right? It gets a bunch more detail out, etc. The unsharp masking is another algorithm, and it basically gets rid of noise. So you can just, you know, do this combination of sharpening and, you know, that's, you know, if you have a lot of noise and you sharpen the noise gets attenuated as well. So you want to blur it again to kind of get rid of the noise, and that's what unsharp masking does. But anyway, this picture right now is unstretched, and it's pretty hard to see. So now it's the magic of IMPBG, and that's the tone curve. So there's a little window, and it's basically a histogram, and you can paint into the histogram. So this histogram is now only showing for my preview window. So if I just take this little spot here, you know, it only shows that histogram. But now I can just draw in it, and, you know, I can adjust the contrast, etc., and see what happens, right? And now if I sharpen it, you know, it's probably sometimes easier to see, or you can see what's going on, etc., right? So that's super nice. So now, you know, hey, you know, you see the detail come through. There's a button here that select and process the whole image. So you click that, and now it does the entire image. Now the entire image is stretched and sharpened, etc., right? So already I'm kind of starting to get happy with that. But my image was only, my histogram was only for this square when I stretch it. But now I have the entire image, and you see again the bump at the beginning, which are my prominences. So just let's boost up the prominences a bit. So that's background. So you always have to kind of find it. Right, there it is. So now you want to just play around with the stretching and all that, and see if you can kind of get the curve into a place where, you know, it blends nice, etc. What I often do is invert it, because I've got better results that way. But yeah, you know, you just want to play around with it. Anyway, it's I've stored one of my playful things. It's just trial and error. So this is one of the things here, and the tone curve is where's the curve now? Do I see it?
Is it that one, fourth one there?
There it is. Yeah. So this was the curve I made, right? So yeah, you kind of decrease the background at the beginning, and you start raising the prompts, and then you go linear all the way back. So that's basically that stretch that you make, and to get to that image. So yeah, that's day and night from the incoming image coming in, right? And yeah, the wavelet sharpening is great. It adds a lot of detail. The interesting thing is, right, I think the same with planetary, is that you know, wavelets almost feel like it's cheating, because you throw this blurry picture in, and suddenly you get all this detail. Where's the detail coming from, right? It's just analyzing, but you know, it's based on signal theory. I don't think it's completely off. And you know, if you make an animation, you do see things move around and, you know, be consistent. So it's not random, right? It's basically the signal is there, just compositing some of that
all
stuff.
the time.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's IMPBG, highly recommended, especially just to try to get that stuff out of. You know, I showed a stretch in Photoshop before, and it was much harder to get it to stretch in this precise manner compared to this tool. So maybe it does floating point calculations instead of integer, right? And it just has more detail per pixel to kind of keep the especially the glare around the sun in check compared to the faint prompts and all that, right?
So I imagine the most difficult part, because the thing I'd like to strive for is, I see this done often. For me, it's not that your work is bad, but it's like I'd like to try to get the both the disk and the prominence to match up as both as just images themselves, where one's not inverted and the other one is. You know, have them both, you know, on the same profile. Have you ever tried? Do you have a routine down here in IPPG that'll actually do that, or is that just like really difficult to do in the program? You understand what I mean?
Also, you mean if you capture them separately, the chromosphere and the photosphere?
No. I mean, so you got the thing that I've tried to do, and I'm glad you demonstrated it here, is try to get proms to show up in a surface recording, right?
Yeah.
And you demonstrate it nicely here of how to do that, or how to actually look at the histogram to see if you even have prom data there. But as you demonstrate here on the curve, before you invert the image of the disk, everybody struggles to get the brightness of the edge of the image to not overwhelm the brightness of the actual disk. You're trying to like match them up with each other, and it's like really difficult. I mean, have you ever do you have a profile that fixes that? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's hard, right? So yeah, you can tune the things more precisely and add more points, because every you know, the brightness actually kind of falls off over this edge completely, right? So it almost extra every point, you know, like this one just affects only this level of brightness, right? So if you just wanna tune it completely and see like, okay, how much of the glare can I get rid of, and maybe if I don't want to invert it, right, what happens, right? So stuff like that. So you know, I think so yeah, if you want to take this image and it kind of contrast it a bit, now you want to start adding this back in. Yeah, you know, you kind of want to.
Yeah, that's the part I had difficulty, is trying to get that edge to match up with the disk, you know. I mean, you're getting it pretty close there. It's almost the way I kind of cheat, but it's very laborious, is just to take that image and do some Photoshop action magic to it and get rid of that edge so that they match up like we're trying to do right here.
Yeah.
And but it's a pain. So.
Yeah, it's just fiddly, and to be honest, right? Sometimes the profiles work well between captures or days, and sometimes they are not, because the brightness just fluctuates too much. And you know, I have a bunch of them stored, and some of them work better than others. You know, yeah, this one.
Nice. That's kind of nice looking.
Yeah. So yeah, and you can take it in Photoshop and stretch it further, right? So you know, or colorize it. So there's multiple things possible. It has a list of previously used ones, so you can just you know, have a library of them and use them like that. Yeah. So yeah, IMPPG for useful. So then the other thing I've been doing, and you know, AutoStacker is finally done with this image. So was funny. So then the other thing I've done is I've been using Topaz denoise, and that's a really interesting tool. Again, you know, again, debatable if it's cheating or not, but you know, I'll take it. You can use it for deep sky as well. You know, you have to be really careful. It can blur things out too much, or over sharpen it, or all that. But the really interesting thing is what it does is so I take the one that I got out of IMPPG, and then I load it in this denoise program. So this uses kind of some machine learning type thing to reconstruct images based on the stuff that you throw in there. It gets detail where you think there's no detail before, and you wonder where that comes from. But it's really interesting. So why is it not showing there? All right, sure. So I don't know how well this works over the Zoom. You know, you have to be playing around with all these settings, right? So this one looks like it's too painterly, so I don't know what's going on. There's this AI algorithm. There's also the AI clear, which is another algorithm that sometimes seems to work better. So I've used that a lot. It's actually faster as well in terms of processing. So, you know, if you look at the comparison right now, this looks pretty good, right? You can do enhance sharpness a bit more. You can reduce some of the noise. So yeah, you get a lot more of that filamentary stuff in there right now. So you know, it also got rid of a lot of this noise. So on the limb, right, where there was a lot of kind of glare and all that, it kind of got rid of a lot of this this pixely noise. So that seems to work really well. So yeah, it's a great tool, right? It's another kind of step in the process to make these images really more interesting looking. Let me know if you have any questions, if you play around with it or not, right? The trial is free. It's like 14 days. I think the software was like $70 or $60. You can find some discount codes every now and then. You know, it's pretty useful stuff. And if you make an animation, what you can also do is, so you run, right? You make the images through AutoStacker, you crop them, you stabilize them, you sharpen them, right? They can all work on file lists. And then, you know, the same thing you can do with this is you can just throw a file list in it, and it will kind of go through it, right? The AI stuff is pretty slow, so it will go through it, and it'll dump a whole list of images again. And now you have like sharpened and fully processed images like this. Oh. So right, and if you know, I put them in a presentation, so you know you can see the difference, right? So auto-stackered with like the artifacts, you crop them, right? You stabilize them. So stabilization sometimes gets rid of some data because the images get thrown around, so it crops it a bit further. Then you have the wavelet sharpen. Then you have the denoise, right? So yeah, it's just basically it feels like you reduce another layer of fuzz from the camera or something. And then what you can do is go into Photoshop and colorize it, right? And there's a really easy way to colorize it. So I don't know if you're aware of how that works, but I can easily show it. Let me just open up this thing. So where's my layers? Let's scroll. Doesn't want to scroll. No actions, info, layers. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so basically, right, you get the image coming in. It's a mono picture. Normally, what I think denoise does, it actually saves it as an RGB for some reason. But anyway, you do want to convert it to an RGB image, right? So you go to mode and then RGB color, and that kind of makes a RGB image out of it. Then you can use the colorize thing. And what you do with colorize, or sorry, it's called levels. I just renamed it in colorize. It's really easy. So you go through every channel one by one, and you change the midpoint of the image. So you go to the red channel, and you can change the red channel to like 1.6. Take the green channel to 0.8. Blue channel 0.2, and that kind of gives this kind of a palette, right? You can play around with it. You can do less red. You can make them, you know, any color you want, you know. But it's only by shifting the midpoint of the levels tool. right? So I'll show it again, right? Background, you go to layer, new adjustment layer, levels. And now you go to red, right? And you select red, like 1.6 or something, green, go a bit less, and blue, a lot less. You know, you end up with this colorized picture.
Yeah, I did that same thing, but I made it a Photoshop action.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's consistent across all my images.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But that's a way to colorize it. You know, what I've done before as well in some point, but I didn't want to pay for the Premiere license. But if you want to edit video, you can actually save this as a lookup table. You can apply the lookup table to the videos. You can colorize videos completely this way. It's another trick that you can do, which is nice. Oh, I kind of screwed that one up. Yeah. The other thing is, you know, you can curve it a bit, right? So, you know, just add a normal stretchy curve and kind of, you know, play around with it a bit to kind of get maybe the sky a bit darker and play around with contrast. So that's always a useful trick. But it's all artistry, you know. There's no science here anymore. And the other thing I found, and for some reason it's always I haven't found the precise way to do it in a filter, but I sometimes just make a copy of the incoming image, like I make a copy of the background, and then I make that copy into a overlay. And what that does is it enhances the contrast, so it makes the brighter things brighter and the darker things darker. And it kind of gets to a more kind of interesting looking image sometimes. And then you can blend it, right? So it's only 40%, so you can make it as crazy as you want to. That's a nice way to kind of control some contrast in this and all that.
If you guys are interested, I just pasted a file into the chat that shows the action settings to do the colorizing.
Nice. Yeah, so that's Photoshop then. Let me close that out. And then, so I've played around a lot with making animations, right? So you have FFmpeg, right, to make GIF files, right? You can make looping files, etc. You know, I ended up with a lot of you know, special batch files and stuff, right, to do different things, but it's always a bit limiting and all that. And I found that there's a useful tool called pip, and pip, you can just add a whole sequence of files in. You know, this is actually stuff that I got out of Photoshop, right? You just open it up, and you know, you can see, you know, this is just an animation I made some days ago. What you can do is you go there's a couple of things you can do. So animation options, you can make it bounce around, which is nice to kind of get rid of the you know, the end of video bounce. You can reverse it at the end, right, or repeat it. There are other things you can do. So it actually has a frame stabilization mode in it. So I don't know if you played around with that for like tracking. So you know, for instance, you can select if it's a solar full disk or planetary animation and all that. And then if you select that, there's like extra options in terms of processing where you can track certain features, and you can drag this thing around, and it kind of stabilizes around at that point. So that might be another way that you can do. I don't know if that handles rotation, but you know, give it a try. I found that this looks like it's also pretty well featured. Also in terms of cropping and all that. And then you can basically, from here, you can output it either as images or a GIF or an AVI. You know, unfortunately not MP4, but you know, you can take the GIF and convert it back to MP4 or stuff like that. It works. you wanna set the frame rate to be correct and all that. And I think that's just an interesting tool to just automate some of the options that are a bit obscured in FFmpeg, right? And you just start processing, and it dumps a big folder of files somewhere, and it makes a GIF out of it. The thing I found with all these animations is that sometimes I make a nice animation and it has all this detail and all that, right? Sharpened and looks good, and then you make an MP4 out of it and you upload it to Facebook or Instagram or something, and they just compress the heck out of it, and all the detail is gone. So AstroBin actually has uncompressed GIFs, which are great, right? You can see all your detail. There's nothing being processed about it. So that's super good, but I think it has to do with that these images have a lot of red in them, and they're very dim. And normally these compressors kind of optimize the heck out of all the dim data in these videos, because that's normally data that people don't see. So I think that's where all the detail just disappears. But yeah, pip is a nice little tool. The other thing, and I haven't really prepared a demo of it, but I think it's an interesting thing, is especially if you're talking about like a Mercury type a planetary thing, or going in front of the surface. The tool is called Butterflow, and what that does is it interpolates images. So you can take one image, you can take another image, and you can create like 3 frames in between that are like perfect interpolations in between them. So it uses machine learning again for that stuff, and I've used it to kind of up the frame rate videos and all that. But probably it's also useful if you just make images captures, say, every minute or two. Maybe it can compress or interpolate frames in between to kind of get that detail going. And I think I've seen really good results of that. So it's just another tool to kind of play around with. But many of these tools become a bit clunky, and they're command line, so you have to kind of find how all the options work. There's no interface. They might not work on Mac, if you guys are on Macs or stuff. So it's always interesting. But yeah, well, that's basically all the stuff I want to go through. So yeah, I've given the files as part of the workshop downloads, right? So you can take the files in the folder, the frame selection, which are basically the outputs of the first step out of AutoStacker, and you can see how you can process them and go through all the steps to make it into an animation. But yeah.
So you do your animations with pip?
Yeah, I mostly do them in pip. I've done multiple things, to be honest. Pip looks pretty good in terms of the bouncing, but it's you can also do it with FFmpeg, but it's a bit more clunky because you have to kind of type in the precise frames that you want to go back and forth with. So that works really well. Yeah, I think this one that I shared was with pip.
Yeah, but you say Butterflow does that also, but it's
so Butterflow takes only works on MP4s, so you have to convert your GIF to
I can
MP4.
do that easily enough. I'm just curious. I was wondering if I took the comet video I did last night and ran it through Butterflow, what it would do. But it works because I'm seeing right here. I mean, you can install it on a Mac from source code, which I could do easily. That's interesting. I would give that a try. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think my animation that I have here was pretty fast anyway, right? Every 30 seconds I basically have a video, so you don't really need interpolation. But I think it's an interesting thing if you want to slow it down and want to make interim frames or capture less data, etc. So yeah, that's basically the steps that I normally take.
Right.
You know, I still have issues here. So the thing is, I do see some vague Newton ring type effects. So I don't know if it's the flats that are poorly compensated or something. There's something weird that I see. Also, my tracking of my mount was having problems, so it didn't track perfectly. So if the scope, you know, the sun position in the scope changes, the glare changes position. So you know, you see the glare move around a bit. You know, the image gets stabilized nicely, but the glare still shows the original location of where the sun kind of glared into the scope. So you see some of that still happening. But yeah.
Yeah, let me share a screen here if I can.
Sure.
Let's see if I can do it here.
Let me see if I can stop it.
No, I don't. I can't do it. Sorry.
Hold on. Stop. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Can I do it, Chris, or not? No, it says the host won't allow me to do it.
Hold on.
I don't know if you can enable me or not.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me see.
So I want to show you the field rotation here in this animation.
Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
All right.
I'll just make you another co-host. All right, go for it.
All right.
It should work, I hope.
Guess it's this one here. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see how you notice how the sun kind of rotates a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you want to try to not have happen.
Well, what did you align this with? I'm sorry, Steve.
This was done with the Tim did this. My son did this.
Oh, of course he did.
I sent it out there, but he still couldn't get rid of the rotation. He was able to get the prominence to be, you know, do what it needs to do, but the rotation was still there. So that's what I would like to be able to do. I mean, I don't want to send everything I'm doing to him, you know. So, okay, I don't know how to get out of the, oh, here, stop sharing. All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I want to avoid sending it out to Hollywood and get it done.
Yeah, I don't know how that's compensated can be compensated. I actually looked at that same mount before because it's a nice kind of automated you know, setup and all that. But it's yeah, I can dig into that.
I don't want to have to take my Atlas Pro out and put my high note on it and try to get all that done. It's so much easier to pick this thing up with the lunt on it and take it outside because it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have, if I'm over an hour or something like that, I'm going to get this rotation. Now, maybe I shouldn't care. Okay, but it would be nice not to have that.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing would be that the rotation would be pretty constant, right? So yeah. It doesn't sound like it's hard to compensate.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but it's, yeah, okay.
But yeah, you know, there might be tools. I've played around with a bunch of tools. There's Registacks, right?
Yeah, I have Registacks too. Yeah. Well, I use Lightroom to process all my frames because I can process the one way I like it and then apply it to all of them at the same time, and then export them out. It's a little bit easier than trying to do it all in Photoshop or something.
Yeah, I've used Bridge as well, just the management program, right, and all that. Yeah, I just wonder, right? So even in Photoshop, you can probably make an animation and then animate a rotation over time. So you know, if you just align the
it's a lot harder to do. Yeah, I mean the actual processing of the color and stuff like that. If I want to apply it to a lot of things, then I would do that in Lightroom. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess I have to get back and do some more of this, but I want to try this shutter flow. That looks interesting. You know?
Yeah, it's a nice tool, and the command line arguments are also pretty straightforward. And there's documentation on the
But do they have, it's command line in Windows as well?
sorry.
It's command line in Windows as well?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got some OpenCL stuff. Yeah, okay. So who knows? I have to fiddle with drivers on this one too.
Yeah, if you're still on the Mac, you can maybe just emulate it, right? And maybe it works. Yeah. Cool. Well, hope this was helpful. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or whatnot, but happy to help anytime.
Yeah, there's a few new pieces of software I've never used. That would be fun to play with.
I can definitely see the value in that IMPPG too. It seems to be pretty flexible. I've already started playing with one of my solar images, and I've tweaked more detail out of it just in 5 minutes, just playing around with it.
Being able to combine the prominences and the surface at the same time is much nicer than what I've been doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
and if you're friends or there we go, follower of the Flickr page I have, I do have 2 videos on there where they're not the greatest in the world, where I did use AMPVG with it, and you probably already saw them, but anyway, that was my first time playing with it, and it did really well. But going after seeing what you can do with sharpening, I guess I could just go back and make it look a tad better. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize you can make it look that nice with just that single program. It's like, oh, well, might as well just bypass Registacks like everybody commonly does. I don't know if they still do, but yeah. Huh.
So which did you use that on, Chris, on your Flickr page?
Do what? I'm sorry?
Which images in your Flickr page did you use the
well, when you put it up on the screen, I don't know how well it'll look. If you hold on 1 second.
Because I've got your Flickr page up here. I'm just.
Well, it's a pretty old.
Oh, it's an old one.
Entry or whatever. Let's see. Let's see if I stream. The computer's going really slow, so we'll see what happens here. And there's that.
What's the date on the image?
Well, okay, here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen. Screen, do that. Okay. Share. Okay, you can probably see that now, I hope. Let's see how well this thing loads, and I don't know how decent it's going to look. There you go. That answers your question.
All right.
But that was my first time I was using it. I think this one came out to be somewhere between 2 to 3 hours long. Unfortunately, you see that really nice mask on the left side there. The thing that sucked about when I was capturing all this, I bumped into the mount and that went off, went out of frame. So I was like, oh crap, because I was mainly focusing on those 2 nice groups there, but the other one got cropped out. So
yeah,
whatever. Then there's the other one that's like right next to it. I think that was the next year. Yeah, there it is. No, actually, no, that's the Mercury Transit. I don't want that.
So I just was playing around just briefly with one of my images I had done previously. and I just wanted, I was trying to see if I could do better on the surface detail. And if everyone wants to see what just a couple minutes did for me, I'll show you.
Yeah, please.
Get rid of this stuff here. There we go.
So
Do I have to make you a co-host too?
probably, yeah. We're all co-hosts now. So
There you go. Does it work? Yeah.
let me see here, share. All right, so this is the original image I did. Now remember, I was only looking at the surface detail. See how kind of muddy all that surface detail is? So I just decided to play for just a couple minutes, and I feel that I got a lot more detail there. I mean, just from a few minutes of tweaking on this was the original file, not the combined, because I did two separate images before, with one with the prominences and one with the surface, but this was just the surface image that I just did some of that wave, that curve action on, just to see if I can get some of this detail out. And it looks actually, to me, more natural than this did. You guys able to see both of those? You see where I'm talking about? Oh, flip back and forth between them. You see just the one though?
Yeah. I can
Okay, well, hold on. Let me see if apparently it doesn't let you flip between them like this. Let me try, how do I do this? Let me do a
Click on
let's
click on the bar.
let's just do the desktop instead. Maybe that'll be better. All right, so this is my original image, and the surface looks kind of yucky to me, but I did this in just a couple minutes, and it feels more natural. Now you able to see it?
Yep.
Yeah, you're able to see it. It's a lot better for in that respect. I mean, it gets still kind of fuzzy as you go.
I was just playing for a couple minutes, but I can see the power of that tool just from this. I mean, it's this to this, on the surface. So
yeah.
Is it doing something to the prominences as well, or?
I did. I used that, I tweaked that curve on the histogram to bring these prominences out. And obviously you can see I missed a little band right there to kind of smooth that out. And I wasn't trying for like rock star finish here. I was just trying to see what I could tweak. And it looks like I have more data there that I could pull out of this image than this revealed, right? So, it does look like it's a pretty cool tool. So anyway, I just thought I'd show, just from the couple minutes of seeing you demonstrate it, what I was able to, tweak out of here, because I mean, that looks a lot more natural to me than this surface, right? I do like the detail on these prominences better, but that's just, I obviously haven't messed with it much. So
I guess what the term I like using that for that, as far as processing and images in general, that the old one looks too crunchy.
Yeah, it does. On the surface for sure, but anyway, so yeah, that's kind of cool. So
I'll show you my last thing. So this was last weekend, and I made this is a still image, so I made an animation as well, but a still image, at least you don't see all the compression artifacts. But yeah, pretty good, the amount of detail you can get out of it.
Wow, that is nice.
Really nice, yeah. Super delicate like looking.
Yeah, you see these arcs, right? And I think that's always really interesting, like these curving arcs, and it always falls back to the sun, right? You almost, it's always like coming back, falling back. It's nice.
Fields. That's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's even I don't know if I made this one with the best frames. I think I did. Yeah, so I made an animation as well, but just to process a single image, right? Yeah, it's great, right? You can really kind of hone in on the details and stuff.
Yeah, I would take your worst frames and process them and still come out with something better than what I get. So.
Yeah, it's seeing, right, and it's my scope and my camera seem not to be matched that well, but if at certain fleeting moments the seeing is really good, which does happen, you still get this kind of stuff out of it, so.
Yeah, and I was using, I'm not sure I even had focus nailed on the one I was doing. because I'm still using a manual focuser. That I ended up using my Orion ST80A as the OTA. So and that's what I use with my Quark.
Yeah.
So and it seems to work well, but I do need to put like the electronic focuser on it because I'm sure my focus was off too. So
yeah, I you know, especially with solar, because it's so hot, I just want to put the stuff outside, and I'm on my PC inside, and I just control everything, right? So yes. You know,
I've got an older Nuke that I used to use for stuff like that, and you know, Nuke, whatever you want to call them. And the reason I chose it is because it has 12-volt DC input power.
Exactly.
So,
same.
And that's, you know, you're pretty much restricted to the Celeron line to get that. Everything else is 17 or 19. So
yeah, you know, and just talking about Sharpcap, right? So I bought the Pro version, which is I think a subscription per year or something, but pretty minimal. And I yesterday used it to polar align my my new Mac One mount. Yeah, because he's like, you know. Fulbright was like, you know, you need to stop using it ASI Air stuff. Right? Just grow up already. So okay, cool.
You're gonna buy all of Fulbright's stuff, right? Now that seems to be getting up.
Well, he just wants to play with stuff, right? So anyway, but I used Sharpcap to polar align, and that worked brilliantly as well. So I'm like, Sharpcap is a really awesome program. You know.
There's still a good play for the ASI Air or the StellarMate. And I'm actually going to end up, I've got the StellarMate OS and I've got the Pis to put it on. I'm going to end up pairing it up with my my Star Adventurer because that's super portable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a little brick, you know, to go with it. And it can do everything I would need to do with the Star Adventurer, including guiding.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to end up pairing that up with. So.
Here, let me show you guys this. I popped it up there on the screen. Where I meant to, but here's a section of a YouTube video of just solar system stuff. But here, look at this right quick. Not Jupiter, but if I can get this to work. Okay, here we go. You guys see this, right?
Yep.
So, oh, come on. Okay, here we go. This is something I did a long time ago. What's really cool about this is that there's a section of it where you'll see an explosion occur in that obvious sunspot group that you're seeing going by. But this was, I hated what happened with this. I was aiming for a full rotation, and after like 20 days, I missed it. So yeah, that little group right there, it spit out a flare, and I actually saw that. What was it? When I was looking at it visually, I was just like so enamored by it that I didn't actually record it, and I was like, oh well. So because it happened pretty fast. I mean, they usually take around a minute to 2 minutes before you start to realize something is about to happen. But yeah, that one was really fast, and it was like super bright after like 3 minutes, and I was like, wow, how about that? And,
yeah, if you still have those individual frames, I'd be curious to see if you use IMPPG on it and see if you can get the prominences on the edges in that full disc, you know, as it's rotating.
Yeah, fortunately, I didn't keep them, of course.
Oh. Fired.
I mean, well, I got the individual the frames, but I don't think this is back when I was still an amateur at it, and they don't look that great as far as being able to process it any further.
It doesn't mean there's not data there, though, you know.
Yes, I know, God. But anyway, yeah, if you ever get a chance to be able to do that, try that out. And you know, just of course, you want to try to do it in the exact same time of the day. And fortunately, where I was working at the time, I always had a nice uninterrupted lunch hour, and I just went out to my car, set up the scope, and of course, that was what is it? Made by Ioptron Mini Tower. And so I just put the scope on that. I don't really have to worry about polar alignment because it's now TAS. And because the recordings are so short, I don't have to worry about the rotation either. So anyways, I wonder if this is me that's making that music.
Yeah, it
John,
sounds like a music box playing or something.
Yeah, there we
John,
go.
what
Yeah,
club
that's me. Sorry about that.
What club are you in there?
You asking me?
Yeah.
That's Barnard Astronomy Club in Chattanooga.
Okay, is that the one that had the Nina thing recently?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a smaller club.
Yeah, it's a smaller club and older, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm probably the youngest member of the club, just about. Not quite, but
Exactly the same way when I started with the Raleigh Astronomy.
Yeah, one of the newsletters that Mark put out has your name in it as a new member.
Nice.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Okay.
Cool.
this was definitely very helpful for me. I mean, I got some ideas now, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually wondering, you know, sometimes, right, we have this email group and that's nice and all that, but sometimes it almost feels like we should make a Slack group or something, right? Like, because, you know, sometimes like we're out and like, yeah, there's something happening, right? That's just the one I want to ping people, maybe more directly. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
talk to.
We tried that once before, but some of our members didn't take to it. But yeah, at least a discussion.
What I'd like to have had is the ability to get a report from the Jordan Lake Dam on what the conditions were if somebody, first person went out there saying, it's too cloudy here, don't drive all the way out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would really be pissed if I made that drive today and it was cloudy when I got there.
Ain't that always the way?
It'd be a 6-hour drive if I made it today.
Well,
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys.
cool. Have a good day, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Oh,
Thanks,
bye.
Mark.
Yo.